We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Lowell Wise. I use he, him pronouns. I'm executive director of the Tacoma Tree Foundation. We're so excited to be hosting our friends from Seattle from the last 6,000. And I wanted to share a couple of ground rules and just informational tidbits as we get going for anyone who hasn't been to one of our webinars before. So our speakers this evening are Jessica Dixon Horton and James Davis, or Jim, from the last 6,000. Thank you both so much for being here. Wanted to start off by acknowledging that we are broadcasting from downtown Tacoma. This is the land, traditional and current, of the Puyallup people, and the Puyallup people live here, make their home, and speak the Lushootseed language. This is part of a series of presentations that we have done over the last several years, and you can actually access the recordings from these past webinars on our YouTube channel. Just go to Tacoma Tree Foundation on YouTube, and you can see all the different webinars and presentations that we've had from the past several years. I want to make sure and shout out Tacoma Creates for being a funder of our education program. Tacoma Creates is an excellent program that funds arts and culture organizations all across Tacoma. They are one of the main sources of funding for our education program, and we appreciate it so much and love being part of Tacoma Creates Network. I also want to give a shout out to Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, which is currently funding some of our work on tree policy around the area. And that's one of the reasons why we're focused on kind of a policy issue tonight, which is the preservation of large mature trees. So we are really happy to be talking tonight about the last 6,000. This campaign started back in 2019, and we're so excited to be hearing about some of Seattle's largest trees and the effort by residents to find out where those trees are located. As always, we've got our contact information here, and I'm going to turn things over now to Jim and Jessica. So thank you both so much for being here.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Lowell, for that introduction. And we're very happy to be here too. We've been fans of yours for a while, just to let you know. So just wanted to start out. This is something we share in common, is that the Pacific Northwest is home to the tallest and widest tree species on Earth. And so we feel we're so very lucky to have these majestic trees in our cities, and we'd like it to stay that way. So I'm Jessica Dixon with the last 6,000. I am a landscape designer and urban tree advocate, and we've put together sort of a short presentation about our campaign. The last 6,000 is a program of Plant Amnesty, and it's dedicated to its founder, Cass Turnbull. It was conceived of by Jim, who is with us tonight. He's retired from a career in healthcare, along with Diana Gardner, who is a retired union organizer and tree educator. In 2016, the Seattle Tree Canopy Cover Assessment was published by the City of Seattle, and it was based on a flyover LiDAR study of the city by the University of Vermont, and it listed just over 6,000 big trees left in the city of Seattle. Those are trees bigger than 30 inches in diameter. But the trails stop there. Aerial views without ground truthing are incomplete. The city never asked the researchers to report out on the location, species, health, actual size of these 6,000 trees. And that became the idea for our campaign. How do we find out more about these big trees in our city? And how do we get people thinking about trees? So to sort of merge those two concepts, we started our project to find the remaining majestic trees in the city. because we maintain that in order to get to know things, you have to know their names. So where are these trees? How big are they? What are their species? These were all our questions that we had starting out, and it turns out people were happy to help. So we launched our website back in 2019 with our input form. And to date, we've had 1,400 trees submitted to our database, over 100 in the last 4 months. So we know this project still has legs. We have done 7 classes to teach people about tree identification, as well as neighborhood strolls where people just get to know the trees in their neighborhood. We've done tabling at farmers markets and did one presentation for community council. And then in 2021, for a month, we did a giant sequoia search. And initially, we had 60 giant sequoias in our database. And after, at the end of this search, we had over 130. So who would have known that we had so many giant sequoias hiding in plain view? I'll just review a little bit. We are, we've come out of the Seattle canopy cover assessment that the city of Seattle did, which showed that there were only 6,000, a little over 6,000 trees left in the city of Seattle. And of course, our program is dedicated to Cass Turnbull, who's the founder of Plant Amnesty. And here's where I went over the numbers of trees submitted by volunteers and the number of classes we've had and neighborhood strolls, and talked a little bit about the Sequoia search. And so here's where we are with our 14,000 unique visitors to our website currently, and 2,800 followers on Instagram. This is just a quick look at our Instagram page. Here's where we're featuring our event tonight. We post twice a week, and it's a mix of things, education, and also calls to action on our website, on our Instagram page. Whoops, sorry. So here's our real tree superstars. These are trees submitted by our volunteers, and we always love it when they include themselves in the photos. That's not always the case, but yeah, so again, we've got 1,400 trees in our database, and you know, it turns out that when people know a tree and measure a tree and are aware of it in their environment, they're much more likely to protect it. So we have also spent a lot of time sort of collating and sorting the data that we've gotten. And when we can, we take it out to the neighborhood. In this case, we developed this series of posters to share with people in the Beacon Hill and Columbia City neighborhoods. But these are just some of the information that we like to feature and let people know about. You know, in this case, we had at that time 310 trees submitted from these zip codes, and then the ratio, say, of evergreen to deciduous trees, the number of trees that were on private property versus public right-of-way. And we ask people if the trees are under power lines too. And we ask for more information, and if I get a chance to take you to the website in a little bit, I can show you what other things we ask people to record on the input form. And I just wanted to kind of highlight our tree education walks, which we've done all over the city. And we've been really lucky to have Diana Gardner conduct most of these, and she's just great. People just love learning about the big trees in their midst. They're very popular. And again, when people know trees, we found out pretty fast that we were sort of the go-to for questions about trees people were concerned about and trees at risk. So the sort of advocacy part of our campaign has grown in the last few years, and we've looked at and sort of rallied around um, larger lots, like a bigger lot in that is essentially urban forest above Elliott Bay. Um, we are looking at how the ECAs, the environmentally critical areas, um, are are being managed, and especially currently in Longfellow Creek in West Seattle. Um, we rallied around a mother grove, what we called the Mother Grove, which is a big grove of trees in Maple Leaf in North Seattle. And then one of our sweetest stories was this little girl on this slide, and her mom's asked us to help them save a tree on their street, a horse chestnut. And we were able to work with the Seattle Department of Transportation to figure out a solution that actually did leave the tree standing, which was exciting. Um, so I'm just going to say that sort of the bookends of our advocacy, this was one of our first wins, was just a tree on a regular residential site in South Seattle. And it was a Western red cedar, roughly somewhere between 30 and 40 inches DBH. It was kind of bracketing the site, so it was very on the edge. And for some reason, the developer wanted to take it out. The neighbors asked us for help. We went and we knocked on doors and tried to connect neighbors together via emails. We made signs, and we had a little gathering down in front of the tree. We also got some press from the Emerald. Oh gosh, it's the little newspaper down there, and it was great. I mean, it's just very supportive. And ultimately, the developers were convinced to keep the tree. So that was like 2 or 3 years ago. And then this summer, we started to monitor the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections website. And we discovered in July that this tree was slated for removal. This is in North Seattle, and you may know it by now, Luma. We quickly discovered that it was a 200-year-old Western red. It was on the edge of the site. And it was originally in the site plans that the developer had generated and gotten approval for through the city. But somewhere toward the end of it all, they decided to remove this tree. And we had just a few days. We kind of scrambled, and initially we flyered the neighborhood with little flyers to just alert people that this was happening. And we scheduled a gratitude ceremony, which we held in front of the tree, which I'll show you pictures of. But it inspired this guy to climb up in the tree, and a couple of other people who are this is something that they are very committed to, climate activists, very concerned about climate change. Also, the Snoqualmie tribe and the state stepped in and determined that it was a culturally modified tree, so that added to kind of the weight of the case for saving this tree. And we had responses from people all over the world. And again, I'll just go back to this. Hopefully there. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. I had a. There we go. Yeah. So this is the gratitude gathering. We had artists involved. It led to political action. We actually had a contingent of people attend a city council meeting and conduct a silent protest. We had over 100 people, I think I mentioned, attend our first gratitude gathering here. And then art this is art all arrayed along the fence that surrounds Luma. We created a mandala in the street, and people of all ages got to contribute to that. And that was the moment when the droplets got involved, which were the people that there were actually multiple who who stayed in the tree for weeks, essentially. Finally, the city did agree. Actually, the developer, the city didn't actually take much of a stand in it, but the developer agreed to work around Luma. So we were pretty excited about that. But in the midst of all of this, we gained quite a few followers. Like I said, there were people tracking it, wanting updates. So more than 1,500 new followers on social media, the flyers that I mentioned. And then a really interesting part was that we set up a tent and a table with information and had volunteer staff the tent that for updates with the visitors. So this is a tent in the way background here, but it was really actually a great way to educate people and talk about tree policy, and almost all the people that walked by were so supportive and wanted to go up and either take a picture or reach out and touch the tree. And typically when we take on a tree or a project, we try to come up with some statistics, something that shows its benefits, because as we all know, the benefits of these large majestic trees are pretty amazing. So we usually look at stormwater capture and filter the amount of CO2 that it absorbs. And in this case, we had a number for the number of kilowatts that are saved when a big tree shades a building or a series of buildings. These we get through the Center for Urban Forest Research, and this is an Arbor Day National Tree Benefit Calculator. It only goes up to about 40 inches. So because Luma was 80 inches in diameter, we had to double the numbers for this. Because there was such a struggle, and because there was such interest in saving this big tree, we at the Last 6,000 have come up with a Luma amendment, which is adding more trees to tier 1 for protection during development, because we believe that only 300 is not enough, and 300 is the number of heritage trees that we have in the city of Seattle. And when the new ordinance was passed in May, only tier 1 or heritage trees were protected during development, and all other trees, including the exceptional trees, are now can be removed during development. So we're asking for the city to rethink that and spare the largest trees in our city, because without that, we feel like there will not be majestic trees moving forward in our city. So other large trees, by the way, you can find out more about that on our website. So if I take a little tour of the website in a minute, I can show you where we have more information about our amendment. Anyway, there's, we always are encouraged when we see other organizations doing things to engage people and to honor and recognize the big trees in our community. So we are fans of the Growing Old podcast that you can find online about the older trees in the city. Also, Meadowbrook, the community has documented a number of trees in their neighborhood. Shoreline Community College hosts tree walks, and You can actually do a sort of self tour or walking tour of the beautiful trees on the Seattle University campus. So in the end, without protections, we again feel that we will be losing the big trees in our city. And what we've discovered is that we need action and citizen action and neighbors to step up and to intervene and to be a voice for the trees in their community, and that this is really the most effective way that we have to protect trees. We would like to see better policies. We would like to see smarter site planning. We'd like to see innovation on the part of developers, because we know we need trees where we live, and so moving forward, we would like to see policies and efforts to retain big trees adjacent to housing on sites, and we know it can be done. But in the meantime, this is kind of where we are with protecting big trees in Seattle. So with that, that's my last slide here. I might be able to get to a tab showing it's like, so this is our website. We've just redone it, and you can see at the bottom, fix Seattle's tree ordinance with the Loom Amendment. You can read more about that there. And if you just scroll down to the bottom of this front page, the lead page, you'll see where our input form is, and you can send that goes directly to our Google Drive, or people sometimes just email the form in. So these are ways in which people can enter their tree and send it in, and we encourage people to do that. We have a new lost trees tab, and I recently counted. Here's a really fun one. Let's see if I can get to that. So yeah, so these are trees that have been coming in the last few months, and they're just gorgeous. And Jim Field sees when they come in. Ballard all over the city. So we have amazing volunteers who send these pictures in. So if I can do this, I'll take this. Yeah. So that's a little bit of our website, and I'd encourage people to go there. Right.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I wondered if Jim, did you want to add anything to what Jessica already said about the origins or your involvement in the project?
Oh, I was just going to say that, we owe something to our friends in New York City, because they did this street tree inventory project back in 2016. And we were looking at that and reading about it, where they got citizens to go out and measure their street trees and make a decision on health and submit that. So that was one of the seeds for this program was, wow, what if we could do that for our majestic trees? What we did find is initially we thought, oh, we'd love to get information on the trees. And one of the things that we tried to get initially was health. And that's a little harder to measure, we found out. We tried to provide some snapshots of what's a healthy canopy versus what isn't. And I think that we got some good information on that, but that's one of the things we would love to go back when we sort of scrub data. And wouldn't it be nice to have some arborists start to look at some of these so we can really classify the health of these trees? To me, it's very important that we do on the ground to find our healthy evergreen trees. Those are the ones that are providing us as a human community the most environmental benefit. and also just they're part of, our legacy. And then a second one is let's find those healthy evergreen trees that are in the under canopied areas. Because right now we have whole neighborhoods like Beacon Hill and others where we have spent time gathering data, and they are under canopied, but yet they still have these majestic trees. And our feeling is those should be doubly protected,
Mhm.
because those are sort of still there, and they are really contributing to neighborhoods that are, under resourced when it comes to canopy. So it's just been a really good experience to see all of the people coming forward. When we first started, we had no idea what was going to happen, and it just took off. And it just shows that Northwest connection to big trees. And there's something about them that draws people in. And I know we can talk about the environmental benefits, because I know, boy, they're just from an environmental perspective, they're like one of our most important public health infrastructures, and also what they do for they make us feel better about ourselves. Um, but I always just my first always thought is these create awe in me. I'm truly awestruck by these big trees we have, and that's, I think, really worthwhile too. Um, so yeah, it's been a good project, and it's still going on, and we're just working on reporting out. I think that, initially we wanted to map things, but early on we found out that there were people going door to door telling people that their trees were at the end of their life cycle and needed to be cut down. So we thought, oh, wow, this is going on. And we made some decisions to sort of keep the trees in a tree witness protection program, because we didn't want to provide data to the people that are just going to go out and try and convince people to cut them down. But we're at the point now where I think we're going to begin to present more specific data on the trees in a mapping type situation. And we've got some people that are looking at that for us. We're going to start with our giant sequoias. We want to map out our giant sequoias in the city. And then we'll try some other projects too. So it's been quite exciting, and I think Jessica captured a lot of the dynamics. But it's really the people and their connection to the big trees that are the engines, and
Mhm.
it's just pretty impressive to watch.
Yeah, thank you for that. Um, is it fair to say that you're volunteer powered, or are there paid staff that work on this project too?
It's all volunteers, great, like Jessica and myself and others just put in the time to do it. And uh, we like to say that we may be small, but we're slow, because we all volunteer. But it just hangs together. We call it the power of the big tree. And
Yeah,
people, we have found though that we have spent some money on technical services. It's very hard to get volunteer technical services. At some point, those are things you have to put some money out for.
yeah,
And, uh, um, and
absolutely.
you know,
Well, I wanted to ask a quick question before we get to the Q&A questions, which are great. Um, my question is a little bit about terminology. I hear you saying majestic trees. I've heard the word champion trees before, and you were also talking about the heritage tree
Mhm.
program. So can you help the viewers here understand a little bit about the terms and which ones are kind of functional in the government, like for when actual tree preservation policy happens? Yeah, talk to us about, in particular, I'm interested in the Luma Amendment and how that might interact with the heritage tree program that Seattle has.
So you're right. There was a heritage tree program in Seattle. And when we looked at this, we were looking at the trees that are 30 inches and greater in trunk diameter. And under the code, they were exceptional. under the tree ordinance. But there were also other trees that were exceptional, smaller species, you know, a cherry tree or that were smaller than 30 inches that were exceptional under the ordinance language. So that's why we came up with majestic trees, because we wanted to capture, it doesn't have any legal antecedents or anything. We just wanted to capture these are our big trees that, and so there is a heritage tree program, and then other cities, you know, have legacy trees, champion trees. We had a gentleman come visit us who was, and then there was an article also about Cass, because Cass Turnbull started the heritage tree program here in Seattle, and now it's the norm. Many cities have these programs, so it's sort of cool. So that's the origins of our term majestic. We just wanted to capture big, and that's currently it serves the purpose. So
Yeah,
what
I think
other
it makes
terms have
great
you what
sense.
other terms have you heard?
Oh, I think you mentioned most of them. I
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out, as you advocate for the adding of 8,000 trees to the, I think you said, to the Heritage Tree Program. Does that mean that they will be protected differently? Does that mean that they would be just tracked and enrolled in the city program, or how does that look?
So the new tree ordinance got rid of the term exceptional and the designation exceptional trees. So now they just have 4 tiers. Tier 1 is 300 heritage trees. The heritage tree program is since shut down. So it's non-functional because the original people running it said, hey, this isn't we didn't sign up to do this. And so it's now it's just sort of, what would you call, hiatus or something like that. So that means there's only 300 trees in tier 1 that are protected during development. All other trees can be removed. You can replace it with a small sapling if you're a developer, or you can choose to pay an in lieu fee. And then that goes into planting elsewhere. And so we're just saying, you know, what we know from the data we have, there's about 21,000 trees that are 24 inches and greater in trunk diameter on development sites, 7,700 development sites around the city in the neighborhood residential zones. So we're just saying, you know, well, let's take steps to make sure that at least 8,000 of those trees are still here in 10 years. We need to do something to protect them. And we're focusing on healthy trees that are on the perimeter of lots.
That's great to know. That's a great way to think about where to focus energy. I want to get to a couple of these questions. First one I want to cover is, how do you find out a tree is coming down?
So
Jessica, you want to do that one?
yeah, well, you know, it could be in the old days, pretty informal. There could be construction or a sale of a house in the neighborhood. Maybe an older person lived there, and now, you know, that's changing hands. Um, that's kind of what was a red flag for us in you know, prior to this current system at the city. But in last year in November, we had passed a new ordinance called the Tree Service Provider registration ordinance, and one of the requirements for a tree service before they cut down a tree is to post it on the city's website. So they have to post reportable work, which is major pruning, and they have to post removals, and they have to post the removals for 6 days online. So right now, if we are monitoring the website, we can see at least 6 days in advance that a tree, of significant size will be coming down. And we can find out more about, is it coming down for development? Is it coming down because it's failing in some way? So there's ways to kind of quickly get um, to the bottom of it. But that's a new system that the city has put in place. So prior to that, it was basically if a property changed hands, if you live on a block and there's a big tree on your block and it's on the site and people have sold the site, the pressure to to take it out, and we can put up to 4 houses, I guess, now on a site is pretty strong. So more likely that will, that tree is threatened. So that's kind of how we've been doing it. And we have somebody, a volunteer, who's pulling those records every week so that we can take a look at them.
Wow. So a combination of word of mouth, but now you've got actually a public
Yeah.
webpage you can go to and check. That's great.
Mhm.
So when it comes to talking to developers or other parties that are cutting down trees, first of all, do you have conversations with developers? And if so, what strategies would you employ when talking to those folks?
I would say that we don't have, it's a work in progress. Um, so I think that we're trying to figure out how to do that. Um, it's a new time. It used to be the city would be in dialogue with the developer about saving an exceptional tree, but that
Mhm.
has gone down the wayside. So now we're trying to figure it out. Well, we're not sure how to do it, but a lot of now neighbors get, the neighbors, they'll call them up. The neighbors are really connected to their trees. And again, I think it's a work in progress.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't think it's out of the question to have a conversation with the builder or the developer, and the earlier the better. Again, that posting that I described by the tree service providers, by that time, any permit has been, that's at the very end of the process for that tree. So if you can get there earlier, you can get to a builder or and um, think about the site plan and advocate for the tree, the better. Um, and with homeowners, we've done sort of mini campaigns to basically just try to describe the values and benefits that the tree has to stormwater and cooling in a neighborhood, and so we've had some conversations along those lines with homeowners. Is there a way to modify the tree so it's not, doesn't have the impact, and again, that's not the case with trees that are hazardous or sick and need to be removed. That would just be for a healthy tree.
Got it. So um, Tacoma has a really different policy landscape than Seattle has. We have no tree protections anywhere, and I've heard about kind of heritage tree programs or movements like you're doing to identify majestic trees. That can be kind of a first step toward getting tree protections. And so, picking up on Georgette's question here in the Q&A, would it be possible for Tacoma to do a similar program to inventory the last of our majestic trees? How could we go about doing this? And I guess just in general, what advice would you have for those of us in Tacoma that want to preserve large trees?
I would say our experience has been, do start documenting your trees. Get people involved in doing that. I think, I don't know how we could help. We could maybe help on the old input, share our system. But I would say it's just get people to send in information on their trees. You could try and replicate what we were doing. We found it is empowering to people. There might be some existing ones you might want to use, like I think there's icy tree, or there's some ones that you can gather information. So I can share what we have on that. Then the tree information becomes public right away. It's a public site. So yeah, I would say, just start naming the trees in your neighborhood. We had simple goals. We wanted to teach people to identify the top 5 species. And we were going to go around in neighborhoods and start doing that. And then walk around your neighborhood and take a picture, send it in. And it doesn't have to be the exact size, but if you think it's bigger than 30, send it in. And we'll teach people, we'll say, look at what's around. Because we of course encourage people not to go on private property. But if you're looking at a yard with a big tree in it, that front door is probably 36 inches wide. So there's a like object you can sort of compare. Garbage cans, they're about 34 inches wide, stuff like that. But yeah, I would encourage, and I think Tacoma Tree Foundation might be a great sort of host for this. But I just think it's a wonderful thing, and to learn about our neighbors that are there.
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the things that you're tapping into is this idea of stories. Like you saw in the urban forest assessment, a potential story, right? Like this idea that there are 6,000 trees left and they're threatened by development. And then once you get down to the individual tree level, there's also stories that people have. And it sounds like the influence of neighbors and local people is really important when it comes to saving individual trees. There's a question here in the Q&A about calling tree removal places. So for in the case of Luma, there was a somewhat coordinated phone banking effort, according to this person. Is that something that is planned on an ongoing basis for things like contacting developers and homeowners?
Like I say, it's a work in progress, and Luma was very creative, and people would call the tree providers to make sure that they weren't going to cut Luma down. It was very creative, to get a commitment. What we're finding though is the developers just are now going to Monroe and Snohomish, and they're coming in for the day and cutting down the trees and leaving. So it's evolving. But yeah, I think that was a creative process. I think it was spontaneous, and that particular one worked because 3 or 4 tree services providers said we're not going to cut it down.
Yes, and again, that's not that's something that the neighbors offered to do. The neighbors and other community members offered to do. That's not something that we necessarily do in every event. But sometimes people are just sort of inspired and in this case, in the case of Luma, the local tree service providers didn't want to be associated with taking down an iconic tree at that in the light of the attention on that tree. So that worked in our favor.
One of the big highlights was when one of the gentlemen from Alex's tree service showed up, and he was all set to do the project. And he saw everybody there, and he said, I'm not going to do it. And very dramatic, because he said, I'm from Nigeria, he said, and we believe in that in our big trees, there's something special. And I can see you feel the same way. And he said, I'm not going to do it. It was pretty amazing.
Wow.
An amazing moment.
That's a powerful moment. Yeah. It's interesting how all those things come down to individual decision makers sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you so much to both of you. Jessica, Jim, it's been wonderful talking with you. I would love to talk with you again sometime personally and check in on the campaign. But congratulations on all your work, calling attention to the special big trees that we have in the Northwest, and especially in Seattle. So thanks so much to everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
All right. And that concludes our webinar. Take care and have a great night, everyone.